Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I am Justin, the man who navigates by night.
I'm Nico, the Blair Warlock.
And I'm Dan, the man who will not be lost in the woods.
And we are here today to review The Blair Witch Project, directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sánchez. This stars Heather Donahue as Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard as Joshua Leonard, and Michael C. Williams as Mike Williams. So we open with Heather, Mike, and Josh, and this trio is going out to Burkittsville, Maryland. Heather is kind of doing a documentary on the Blair Witch, a local myth in Burkittsville about a witch in the nearby woods. Mike and Josh are acting as her crew. When they arrive in the town, they interview some of the locals, and the locals kind of state that they generally avoid the woods, and most espouse some kind of belief in the myth. After a successful day of filming, the trio rest up and embark into the woods the following morning. So, Dan, a casual trip in the woods, what could go wrong?
You know, a nice little stroll. Not much will go wrong, but it does. And the group quickly becomes lost.
Beans.
Despite this, Heather manages to guide them to an old cemetery with some cairns. The group gets some footage and begin to head back home. They won't make it back by sundown, so they decide to camp for the night. That night, they hear some mysterious sounds, but they eventually go to sleep.
I see. So, Nico, how does their attempt to get back home go?
Not well. The following day, they try to return to Home Sweet Home, but they become more and more lost. Josh and Mike become more and more frustrated with Heather because it doesn't look like she actually knows where she's going. Eventually, the group has to camp again once the sun being set, and Josh and Mike are really frustrated by this turn of events, but they grudgingly agree. And that night, they hear some sounds coming from outside of their tent once again.
And that's never good, because the group awakens and finds 3 cairns surrounding their tent. In addition, they have now lost their map. The group decide that they are going to go south, following a compass, but start to become mentally strained. And it's at this point that Mike makes a great reveal, Dan. You know what that is?
What's that reveal?
It turns out that he, quote, kicked the map into the river as he found it to be useless. Shocking revelation. Heather and Josh confront him, but again, time never stops, like linear, nature of time and all that.
Linear nature of time, yeah.
So the group have to camp once again. That night, they hear voices outside of their tent, and something actually starts to kind of manipulate and feel up their tent. Like, you know how you can push your hand up against the tent and it can freak out the person inside the tent? That's exactly what went down. The group flee their tent, they run into the woods, and they hide out until dawn. Great game.
Very good.
But, Dan, what happens?
So now the following morning, the group finds that someone, or something anyways, has gone through all of their possessions. They continue walking, but find a river crossing that they had passed a day earlier, meaning that they've actually walked in a circle.
Aw, hell.
This exacts a massive mental toll on the group, and somehow Josh mysteriously disappears. Heather and Mike try to find him, but they can't, so they just say fuck it and keep going. Later that night, they hear Josh screaming, but they do not leave the safety of their camp to go find him.
Okay, that sounds kind of bad, but I'm sure there's a happy ending on the horizon. Nico, finish us off.
There's not, but I'm always happy to finish you off, Justin.
Oof.
The following day,
Why?
Heather finds a bundle of sticks and opens it. She finds a piece of Josh's tongue, tooth, and finger. Oof. She doesn't tell Mike, though, and the duo keep on walking. That night, Heather and Mike hear Josh again screaming, and they follow his screams to a house in the middle of the woods. Mike and Heather enter, and they go to the basement. And at this point, an unseen force attacks them both, and they presumably fall victim to the Blair Witch.
I see. So let's take this one from the top, shall we? And we kind of have to start with the visuals here. So this is a found footage movie. The movie looks like it's been filmed with consumer level things, right, Dan?
Yeah, just like a camcorder. They have at that time, a semi-pro camcorder as well that I think they're carrying around. So we kind of get a blend between the two.
Right. They've also, it looks like maybe, I think it was Josh who took a more professional kind of camera. I think was that the DAC he kept referring to?
Yeah.
The DAT. I think that was the black and white one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one was maybe a little more professional because he kind of hinted that he took it from his job, but like they didn't really approve that per se. But in any case, this kind of makes the visuals look less like a professional movie and more so like a kind of home movie you could make yourself. So we get these scenes where everything is very candid, right? I guess that's the word we'd use, Nico.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And that's kind of how this is. We get some of the scenes shot with the black and white camera, but Dan, am I correct in saying the majority of the scenes were with the kind of semi-pro one?
I think the semi-pro one was the black and white. That's what I thought it was anyways.
Most of the movie's in color, at any rate.
Yeah, most of it's in color, which is cool. I mean, we do get some transitions between color and black and white. But yeah, definitely like candid, found footage-y.
Okay. So in terms of the audio, though, Dan, how does that play into it?
So the audio very much sounds like found footage and like from like raw camera kind of sound. One kind of problem that I had though sometimes the audio didn't seem to follow the camera that we were watching. So for instance, Heather always seems to have her camera. Like a couple times I think she gives her camera to somebody else briefly to film her, but like usually it's her camera. But there's like a couple times where we see a shot from somebody else, like from the other camera, and it's of her and she's like crossing the stream. She's good 20, 30 feet away, but we're hearing her voice like it's her camera. Like we're hearing her voice like we're right next to her, which kind of threw me off because the rest of the movie did a very good job of audio following the cameras. And if somebody was farther away, they sounded farther away and whatnot. So occasionally, like I got almost, I don't quite want to say confused, but my ears and my eyes didn't quite line up with each other all the time.
Do you think that was intentional at all?
I don't know. I don't know.
I was going to say, to me, that almost kind of feels like one of those suspension of disbelief type things where, yeah, it might not exactly line up, but I guess for almost the purposes of a movie, that's maybe how they had to do it. Because otherwise, some of the audio might sound a little off. Do you think that might be the kind of reasoning behind it?
That's a good point. I think you're probably right, but I wish they hadn't because to me, it took me out of the found footage thing. Because, you know, the whole point of found footage in particularly this movie is it's supposed to be like real. So when what I'm looking at doesn't sound like it's supposed to sound like, I'm out of it now. Like you've broken my, you know, suspension of disbelief. It's just cognitive dissonance, I guess. It just doesn't line up to me.
Okay. Now, Nico, I guess this is kind of sort of in the realm of visuals, but Heather has a very determined attitude when it comes to the filming of this. You know, she never gives up. She films every moment. And this is kind of like a documentary type thing, you know, where for documentaries, when they make them, they never turn the camera off. They want to catch every moment of what they're doing. How did you feel about that throughout the movie? Just real quick.
So as a narrative device, I liked it. As a character, like if I was in Josh and Mike's shoes, I would have been so fucking pissed at Heather the entire time. Like, dog, why are you filming this? We're clearly having some kind of mental toil and strife right now. But given that we are trying to film a documentary and that this is a movie that is something where we're supposed to have that point of view of like a literal over-the-shoulder kind of thing, like, oh, you know, this is very clearly homemade, I think it makes sense. And I think given the sort of candid nature that you brought up earlier, it definitely contributes to that. So as a framing device, I liked it. But as a narrative, I found it kind of frustrating.
Okay. And I guess on the tone of frustrating, at least for me, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about just found footage as a whole. So this movie it's not the first found footage movie. There's others. Cannibal Holocaust is one of them. And Nico, what was the other one we were talking about before?
The Connection.
That's what it was. It was The Connection. It was The Connection you were talking about. So real quick, I almost kind of feel like this did, though, help revitalize the genre. I mean, this is kind of, when people say found footage, this is still kind of one of the very first ones people jump on and say, hey, you know, like Blair Witch Project. Dan, generally speaking, I think this is the first found footage film that we've really discussed on the pod. How do you feel about found footage stuff, just generally speaking?
I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. I get it. I understand why they do it, and I understand the appeal and everything, but for whatever reason, to me, it just doesn't do it. I guess when the film really kind of gets going near the end, I enjoyed the found footagey aspect of it, or not even aspect, but because it is found footage, but I enjoyed that, and it kind of made me feel like I was there. But the first third of the movie, before things really start getting spooky, I don't know. I just don't really like it.
Nico, are you of similar mindset, or do you find the found footage to be great?
I like found footage. I think that everything after this, well, maybe not everything, but a lot of its sort of descendants in the horror sort of family have done it better. And to the point earlier about Cannibal Holocaust, I think that is maybe more better known for being I suppose snuff film-ish, also just having to do with cannibals, than it is maybe necessarily because it's found footage. But that's a different argument for a different episode. But regardless, I do agree that the beginning, especially the first third, was a little bit cheesy. In particular, the part where they were interviewing the townspeople of Burkittsville, Maryland, just seemed kind of lifeless. Although I did laugh when there was that mom and child where the kid was picking his nose and putting it in the mom's mouth. I thought that was funny.
I guess from my perspective, I'm kind of not a fan of found footage either. And perhaps my biggest gripe is, particularly, I guess, bringing it back specifically to the Blair Witch Project here, I almost feel like there were multiple times in the movie where there was one in particular where Heather was running and she was like, "Oh my God, did you see that?" And I was like, "No, I didn't, because your camera is shooting into complete darkness. So no, I didn't see that." And pieces like that, I think, kind of frustrate me at times. But I think we can kind of all agree, regardless of our feelings on it, this movie definitely has a legacy, right? It definitely changed or helped impact the landscape of horror, for a long time afterwards, right?
For sure.
Mm-hmm. I think one way that it definitely did, in not a way that I expected really, but something that just in talking about this and thinking about it, I've started to sort of mull around in my mind. This is something this premise is something that I see a lot in indie horror video games. You find a lot of found footage stuff, or people walking around in the woods with a whole bunch of kind of hard to see things oh, what was that? What was that? And I think there is a lot to be said about how just the overall ambiance of this being a lower production sort of piece of the media went on to not necessarily influence films alone, but I think it also, in a large way in 2021 in particular, the past few years, has influenced a lot of video games on Steam that you can get.
That's interesting, because I feel like, kind of thinking about that too, with video games, you are playing as the character. And in a found footage film, the whole point is to put you as a person who is there, as opposed to viewing third person or something like that. So I guess I never thought about that, but they are a very similar storytelling device, I guess, used.
I think one cool example of that, especially in video games, I don't know if either of you guys have ever played Halo Combat Evolved, but there's a part where you're about to fight this really menacing alien race known as the Flood. And you get this kind of almost found footage from a soldier's perspective. And you see his unit enter this building and they see weird stuff happen and they're being attacked and everything. And it's a really cool kind of way to set it, because at least from a game perspective, because you see the soldiers walking through these hallways, and then just a couple minutes later, you're walking through these hallways.
Yeah, that scared me as a kid.
Yeah.
And also that whole fucking level, the library, terrifying.
And I think it's really cool because in that respect, you are right there. So that sense of dread and tension, I think, is already building up. And that was a really cool kind of execution there. But I think when it comes back to this movie, in my personal opinion, I don't really find this movie to be that scary. And I'm going to say that part of the reason is, well, first off, I don't find complaining to be scary. And this movie had about 50 minutes of complaining. Like, and I might be exaggerating there a little bit, but there was a lot of complaining in this movie. And I mean, first off, and I timed it out. The first half an hour was
dead
like,
ass?
Yes. The first half an hour of this was straight up like, we're just going into the woods and we're interviewing the townies. That was the first half hour of this, hour, 20-minute movie. Then, when they were kind of like getting lost, I didn't find that to be scary. Like the first kind of like, oh shit moment for me was after, I think it was the second night they spent in it was actually the third night, technically, they spent in the woods, where they wake up and there are the 3 stone cairns surrounding their tent. That was like the first little bit of tension that you get, but then we just start arguing again. And I didn't really think, honestly, for me, there just wasn't a ton of tension, but I could be wrong here. Dan, why don't you go ahead and give me your balanced and fair thoughts?
So I personally don't really find it all that scary either. However, I find it very real because I think I've done a ton of camping in my life. And I think the arguments and everything definitely happens. When you're out in the woods in the middle of nowhere with a group of people and, you're out there for days and somebody is doing something to annoy you, after a couple days, like, you get fucking mad and you argue, or somebody does something stupid or like kicks the map in the fucking in the river. Like,
we'll get to that later. We'll talk about that.
and obviously that's probably like the one time that is totally like, yes, get mad at him. But like when people do start to do things over time, when you're stuck with them in the woods in the middle of nowhere, like the arguments do happen. And I've gotten my fair share of arguments like that. And while I didn't really find it scary necessarily, I understand a lot of the character actions and everything because I've been in those situations or similar situations anyways. And when you're just in the woods at night and something makes a noise and you're just like, well, what the fuck is that? And like, to your point, when you mentioned like kind of the, running through the woods at night and Heather's like, oh, what was that? Did you see that? And like, you don't see anything. To me, like if I put myself in that situation, that almost makes it scarier because you're just running through the night and somebody's like, oh shit, what was that? And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, yo, what was that? Oh, fuck. And like, you kind of get scared too. So I can kind of understand the scary aspect of it. I've kind of, I don't want to say been there, but I've experienced a little bit of that, I guess.
No, I mean, I definitely feel that part. And I feel like if I was there, personally there in their boots, I would probably, I would be scared at certain things, like no doubts. And I've talked on this podcast before about how there's a difference between like city dark and country dark.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I feel like still though there was a couple things, and we'll talk about this because I know you got it like that. So we'll talk about this later. But Nico, are you scared of the dark?
I used to be as a kid, but no, not really.
Good. Are you scared of the Blair Witch Project though?
Also, no, not really. I found it mostly humorous, to be honest. Like, I found it to be more, because I'm so much far removed from this, both as someone who got into horror largely only 4 years ago, and as someone who, like, we are citizens of the 21st century. We have so much more, both in the horror genre as well as developments in like technology than both the producers of this film as well as the people in the characters in this film had. And so it is a little bit difficult for me to separate that out and put myself in the shoes of someone who would have been there, or at least maybe like would have been in the audience. I think if I was an avid horror fan when this came out, which I can't remember as I say this, which is sad, but
99.
Thank you. Yes, 99. I was going to say 94, and that definitely wasn't right.
But you are right. That's when the movie was supposed to take place.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. So if this had either happened to me in 94 or if I saw it in 99, I bet I would have been scared shitless. But considering that we are, a horror podcast and we have come at a whole bunch more terrifying things than this, the reality of it, I think, is scary, but the presentation isn't, if that makes sense.
I got you. And I will say, just for the record, when you talked about seeing it in 99, I didn't quite see it in 99, but remember, I've said on the podcast before, when I was a little kid, I was quite the coward. Mm-hmm. And I saw this like when I was very, like, much younger than I am now. This was like one of the turning points for me, actually, because this didn't scare me.
Oh, okay.
Like, and I was like, oh shit, like horror isn't that bad. Like, the Blair Witch Project didn't scare me, and this is supposed to be like a big bad one, and it didn't scare me. So that's funny that you bring that up, because this is one of like the turning point movies for me or whatever. But I want now to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the production. So Dan, I know you've done a little bit of digging. You're kind of our local research expert, one might say. So tell me a little bit about the production of this movie.
So I kind of found it pretty interesting because a lot of this film was actually improv.
Really?
The actors, and I might get something a little bit wrong, and I couldn't get 100% like clear, concise statements on these, but I think that the actors were actually given walkie-talkies and like just sent out into the woods. And
really?
I know that the directors gave them clues and things to find along the way to keep them on track. But a lot of the character reactions in the film were real. Like when we mentioned that they had been going south for like a day and then found the same log that the same like river crossroad thing that they had found before, and they were all mad. That actually happened, and that was their real reactions because they were actually mad.
That's pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, walked in a circle. So like a lot of shit was real. And that scene that you had mentioned, Justin, where they were in the tent at night and the tent started like shaking and everything, they didn't know that was going to happen. The directors just like ran up and started shaking the tree. And like, and when she was like, yo, did you see that? What the fuck was that? Like, that was one of the directors or somebody like walking around in like white, in like a white suit or something. They didn't know. So a lot of it was like real to the actors as well, which I think is cool because I guess it gives a realistic thing, but I feel like this is one of the movies that to me kind of pushes it too far. And I was reading that Heather said something about how the final scene in the house was like the most terrifying thing like ever.
I fucking believe that.
And this is one that I'm not entirely sure about, but I think even like hearing like Josh disappearing and hearing him like yelling and screaming at night, I don't think they knew that was scripted. I might be wrong on that, but they might not have known. Can you fucking imagine like walking around this like house and trying to find the person that went missing in your group, not realizing it's just fake? And also the actors went into the film thinking that the lore of the Blair Witch was real, which is not. The directors made all of it up. It's all fictional, but they thought it was real. So like, can you imagine exploring these haunted woods and like thinking all this shit is real? I feel like that's kind of pushing a little too far.
You're an actor for this and also a guinea pig.
Right, yeah. So I feel like that's pushing a little too far personally, but yeah, I just found that really interesting because I think the production was just very, very, very different than most other horror movies or any movie really.
That brings up an interesting question though about, whether or not, because we've kind of discussed this a little bit in Tremors. Remember in Tremors, I believe it was, there was the part where there was something on the pants. You remember this? And
yeah.
I forget the character, but she had to take off the pants real quick. And they wanted to get like an authentic reaction from that scene. So I remember that, and I'm torn. I'm a little bit conflicted. So naturally, I'll give my opinion after Nico. How do you feel about those surprises to the actors in the movie? Are you okay with it? Do you think maybe they should be more aware of these things? Because if they're more aware, then you also can't get that authentic reaction. So how do you feel about it?
I think that if it is something where they know ahead of time, like, we're not going to tell you everything, but we are going to surprise you on some stuff, I think that's a fair way to do it. Otherwise, I think if you do it with like maybe one or two things, like the chest burster scene, I don't think that you could have gotten a better take from that if it was planned, for example. And there's a couple other instances like that in the genre. So if it's a one and done type thing, I think it's fine. But if they're going to just terrorize the cast without letting them know, like, hey, we're gonna be fucking with you, I think that is a bit much, yeah.
Okay. Because I actually, believe it or not, agree with what you said, kind of the first thing you said, which was, I think if at the start, you know, they disclose to the actors, hey, look, this is going to be a movie where we're going to look for some authentic reactions. So things might happen that you're not aware of. Just be aware of that going into it, you know, kind of
realize, my dude.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of like expect the unexpected type deal. I feel like that's fair. And to be honest, I feel like I would do something like that just once, just for like the crazy ass experience of it all. But I don't know. If it was like, if they really didn't know, I feel like, yeah, that probably is going to get you like 2% more terror and fear and all that. But I don't know if it's necessarily worth it in terms of a moral standpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you never know, because I'm gonna keep it real. Like, maybe not in this movie, especially because the cast was so young, but like, imagine if somebody got like a fucking heart attack or some shit because they got too scared. I don't know. That's
I'd
kind
be
of wild.
shocked if that hadn't happened before. I would be genuinely shocked if that hasn't happened before on set.
Maybe. But also, I will say this. If I didn't know, like, they were going to come touch up a tent and then those hands or whatever started showing up, yo, I would punch one of them hands, yo. Geez, man, like, that is my reaction to everything. Like, I would just come out swinging, which probably would not have gone well for me. But that's my reaction to most things.
And Justin gets removed from the set on day 3.
But there's a little more to this. So, you know, we're going to turn to our marketing expert, Nico. Nico, they did a little bit of viral marketing for this movie, didn't they?
Yeah, so this is one of the first movies that really truly went viral in a way that we know now. When they were marketing it, they actually made missing persons posters for the cast of the show. And people saw these and thought that this was an actual thing. And similarly, when they were approaching the set with the sort of like understanding, like, okay, this is a real thing on the Blair Witch, they actually went and made websites kind of about the Blair Witch as well, kind of almost as a predecessor to like an ARG type thing, an alternate reality game that some IPs use today even still. But that generated so much press from people talking about it and thinking that it was real that when the, you know, got into theaters, a lot of people genuinely did think it was real, and so it went viral by word of mouth, which is, well, not entirely by word of mouth, but you get what I mean, because there was no YouTube back in the day. But it's kind of nuts to think about, really.
It really is. And like I mean, I think that's like the first movie that ever like did like a viral kind of thing like that, which is crazy to think about, because like you said, there's no YouTube, there's no Instagram, TikTok. All the mechanisms we know now and use to go viral just didn't exist, you know? And I mean, even the internet was still in its sort of like baby phase, you know, and it's crazy.
I kind of feel like I remember some of the commercials. I feel like the website's the one thing that Nika said that kind of like triggered a memory in me. I feel like one of the websites or whatever, I don't remember if they said this was like a true story or not. They might have, but I remember the website that they like linked to or whatever else like that. And in a way, you know, that was kind of edgy, isn't quite the right word, but it's one of those things where, I mean, the year is 1999.
It was new.
Yeah, it's new.
Yeah.
It's like brand new. You know, a lot of people back then didn't even believe in the power of the internet or whatever else. And I mean, obviously you had films like The Matrix and stuff influencing that kind of discourse, but at the same time, that's a pretty cool thing they did there.
I also read that on IMDb for the first year, the actors were listed as missing, presumably dead.
Yo, that's fucking nuts.
I don't know exactly how true that is, but I mean, I read it on Wikipedia, so I don't know.
Must be true.
But maybe. But I mean, I don't know. When I think about how scary this movie isn't to me necessarily, part of it, like I kind of mentioned before, is because
we know
the audio and some of the edits, kind of take me out of it, and we know that it's not real. But shit, maybe in 1999, if I had seen it and you hear all this backstory, back stuff about it for months before the film comes out, and then you look up on the internet, you look up the actors and they're missing and like all this kind of shit, like, fuck, I might be like, yo, maybe that was real shit,
Yeah.
You know what? I kind of feel like that is a potential point that, how we talk on the pod sometimes about changing your opinion about things?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I almost kind of feel like that is a really solid point there. Like, y'all remember the Great Clown invasion of, what was it?
Yeah.
2017 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but like imagine if there's all these like fucking clowns everywhere, and then all of a sudden a movie about that shit drops, and it's like this actually happened, and it says some people got killed by clowns or something. Like we'd all be like,
it takes place in Derry, Maine, and it's about Pennywise.
Nah, but I mean, like, real talk, like that shit.
Yeah.
That shit would be crazy. And so I guess, and obviously, like, we were all a bit too young at that point in time, I think, to be super like up to date on that kind of stuff. But imagine being, like 17, 18 years old, and you're on the internet, you're a cool kid.
You have a MySpace, maybe even a Zanga.
MySpace in 99?
Fucking ingrate.
That was the thing back then?
Perhaps not.
But I guess regardless, like, you're there and all of a sudden you see all this shit and all this stuff is telling you it's like a true story and like these people are really dead. I guess watching it within that context would probably seem a lot different, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And that was also before, if you read it on the internet, it was true. Or like, I mean, like, that's back when like people, you could actually believe it, or you didn't know better, I guess, at that time.
Our minds were pure, Dan.
Yeah.
They weren't tainted.
Right. Yep.
In addition, I hear there's an album associated with this film. Can someone tell me about that?
So I was watching through the credits, just curiosity. And one of the last things that came up was, it said something like companion album can be found. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? So, because there's like no music in this film. So it's not like there's a soundtrack or anything. So I looked it up. And yeah, there's a fucking album. And it is called, let me pull it up again real quick. It is like the Blair Witch Project, Josh's Blair Witch Mix.
Featuring Royce to 5'9".
Yeah, right. So featuring songs, most of them I don't really know. But I know there's a song by Typo Negative on there.
Fucking Typo?
Yeah.
No shit.
Meatball Manifesto. Lydia Lunch.
Title of your sex tape.
Skinny Puppy. But yeah, they actually put together like basically a soundtrack album for a film with no music. I don't know. I guess that was part of the sort of viral marketing kind of thing, but I don't know how well that worked.
Hear the songs based on the hit film with no songs.
Yeah.
There was one song. There was one song in the movie. When they went to go pick up Mike, they were playing a song then.
Yeah. True.
But, and Dan, I know you're over here dropping the deets on us, giving us the factoids and whatnot, but I'm going to need a little more from you because in addition to being our research expert, you are also our non-tropical wilderness survival expert.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So I got to know. I really do got to know. Did they make all the right moves in terms of being lost in the woods? And would you, with all your years of woodsmanship, what would you say they should have done differently, if anything?
Well, I think they kind of made a lot of understandable decisions, except for one really huge glaring mistake.
What was that?
I wonder what.
Kicking the map into the river. Yeah, that was a dumb fucking decision. But I guess to be fair to the movie, it was kind of obvious that that Mike was kind of losing his shit. So it's a stupid decision, and I don't think that's a great explanation for it, but okay. But yeah, I mean, I think the idea of, okay, we're lost, we don't have a map, let's pick a direction and just go. I mean, they have a compass, so they can always go south. Right. And I think at one point they're like, yeah, we're following the river or something, which is also, I've literally done that. I've been lost in the woods with no map, and we parked nearby a stream, and we just followed the stream, and we eventually got back. Luckily, we picked the right direction. I mean, in that case, I think those kind of ideas were good. I guess overall, yeah, they made decent decisions.
One thing that and obviously I'm going to chalk this one up to kind of the magic of the Blair Witch or whatever, but going south should have worked. Mm-hmm. Like that totally should have worked. Mm-hmm. Secondly, taking it a step back, I don't think Heather ever really knew where the fuck she was going. Like at the start of the movie, they even said it. They were like, you got us lost. Like it took us like more than 2 hours to get here. You said it was going to be 2 miles. It turned into 2 hours. And, they were criticizing her even when she was taking them to the graveyard, the cairns. They were criticizing her at that point in time. And for me, the biggest red flag would have been, if I'm going to go into the woods, I'm going to kind of just learn a little bit or know, hey, this is generally how I get from here to here. This is generally how I do these things. And this is generally how I get back. And also, to me, the dumbest fucking decision of all. Why are we going back a different way than the way we came? Yeah. Oh, because that was the fastest way to get to the two things.
Yeah, that shit made no sense.
That we were going to see, but now we're going back a different way. And yes, she was stuttering, so I assumed it was, hey, she really doesn't know where she's going. But I was like, you mean the things that you've seen, AKA landmarks? Like the things that you could use to potentially orient yourself? That's what you chose to not follow? So, I don't know. Part of me was like, point. I don't know about that. But secondly, they survived out in the woods for much longer than they had intended to. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of like, they must not have any food. They must be starving at that point.
Oh, Ramans was eating a leaf.
He was eating a leaf. I have eaten a leaf before as well.
Oh, shit.
I have.
Did it taste good?
It tasted like a leaf.
I believe you.
Oh, leave me alone.
Both of you make like a tree and shut the fuck up.
But Nico, do you think there were any...
I'm sorry, that was overly hostile.
Yeah, you are overly hostile. You were barking up the wrong tree there.
God damn it.
But I need to know, do you think there were any critical mistakes that Dan and I haven't mentioned that the group kind of fell prey to?
See, this is what I'm unsure of because I do not have any camping experience. I am someone I am a slave to creature comforts, and I very much am a fan of civilization. But I do have one question for both of you. Is it easy to sort of get lost and end up going in circles like that if you don't have a map?
Yeah.
Is that something that happens a lot? Okay. Then, that sucks. They fucked up.
So I remember reading that the phenomenon is more likely to happen in a place where there's not a ton of things. So, for example, a desert or the tundra. That's where it's I think peak worstness, it's the worst there because there's nothing to orient yourself. And the human body, literally, we don't walk straight without things to orient us. Mm-hmm. You will veer in one direction eventually. And getting lost in the woods like that, you're eventually not going to go the way you think you are.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, especially when you stop. I mean, you stop and you take a break and then you get up and, well, you may not be going the exact same direction, or you camp out for the night and you wake up and unless you mark which direction you were going, it's hard to know exactly which way you're going.
That's fair. Okay.
Also, Mike was a straight idiot, but you can't be that dumb. This map, it makes no sense to me. What? Okay. I mean,
who is more dumb, Mike or the chick from The Descent who just left the map? Who was worse?
Mike.
The chick from I would say the chick from The Descent.
See, I say Mike because the chick from The Descent understood the value of a map. She just didn't go with it. Mike got angry and kicked the map into the river. First off, kicking paper sucks. If you were going to kick something, go kick something else.
He wanted to kick a tree, but not hurt himself.
Go kick rocks.
So he kicked paper, which is a dead tree.
Oh my God.
The podcast is done.
No.
The podcast is over, y'all.
But, I mean, I feel like that girl from the descent was dumber because she knew, you're right, she knew the value of a map and said, fuck that. Mike is just ignorant. He just doesn't know.
Bruh, also,
That's
like,
where I'm siding.
I get that, like, reading a map can be kind of difficult, particularly that kind of map without, like, the, you know, the fun and friendly Google Map features. But don't tell me that, like, you don't understand how valuable a map can be. It was useless. No, it wasn't, Mike. You're useless. So I want to go ahead, and as we kind of, you know, we've already shit-talked that group, but could we do any better? So the DOTD group was blackmailed into going on a trip into the woods. Because real talk, we are not going in. We're not going. Like, I would listen. Real talk. Like, I would go camping. I would go camping with Dan. We'd have some fun times. But I'm not going into the haunted woods to look for a fucking graveyard or a witch.
Nope.
Like, that's
Dan is not either.
So I want to know straight up. So we got to go, the three of us. First off, in terms of, and I've asked this before, but in terms of like usefulness to the group, who's the most useful person? And who's the least useful person? So
Me.
Okay, so we all agree that Dan, you're the most useful. Nico, we keep you around.
I'm just moral support, y'all. 100%.
So let's say, you know, oh God, and you know this would totally be me, who's like, it's right over there, and then Dan be like, dude, can I see the map?
Yeah, that would 100% be you.
And then I'd be like, no, dude, it's like right there. And then like 2 hours later, we get there and you're like, bro, you did not know where we were going, did you? I knew where we were going. And then Nico's like, you didn't. And I'm like, oh, you trying to lead? No, I never said I could lead.
Hold up. Remember the time that we fucked up crucially when we even had a map, Justin? We printed out directions to go pick up some Italian food this one time. You just made us
sound so old.
Wow.
Keep going.
To go get Italian food, you had to print directions.
We did. It was sad, but it's fine.
What was this, 1999?
Look, shut up, okay? We printed out directions, but there was a little bit of a map too, and we ended up going all the fucking way down Bearfax Parkway and back without getting our fucking Italian food when we had a map and directions.
To be fair, audience, first off, believe it or not, the year was actually 2010 or 11. And secondly, more to the point, the particular road had one turn to make to get to the restaurant. And if you missed that turn, you literally had to drive like 3 or 4 miles up the road, then 3 or 4 miles, then take a U-turn, 3 or 4 miles back down, pass to where you were, make another U-turn, and drive back up the road again. And if you fucked up, you were just going on that loop again. There is no way. That road sucks dick. But secondly, yes. So even with the map, I can see how people can get lost. But I want to know. So second night, we start hearing voices. Dan, what's your reaction? You start hearing a little bit of hee-hee in the woods.
It's just Justin.
I would dig in my pack and take out the gun that I would have brought.
You know what's funny? You know what I was about to say?
What?
I reach into my pack and I pull out my cutlass because, or even if I don't have a cutlass, obey the rules and regulations, everybody, of your regions. But I would bring a fucking hunting knife, like a big ass Rambo knife. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, we're going to haunted woods. Fuck yeah, I'm bringing something.
I was taught that you never ever go into like the woods like that without some form of self-protection. Like
I'd bring a guitar.
Don't do it. As we said about the usefulness.
Bro, if this was Left 4 Dead,
true.
You would be beating fuckers up.
True. But you know, now let's go ahead and take it up a level. Next night, you know, like there's some Karens left outside our tent. At that point in time, what's your reaction?
Are they asking to see our managers or not?
Yeah,
they are actually.
Yeah. Oh fuck. The rocks are talking to us.
Dude, I don't know. I would be freaked out, to be honest. Like I'd be like, fuck this.
And I mean, following the compass, you know, Dan, you can obviously navigate, but we show back up in a circle. How would you feel after that? Would you just be like, I'm fucked?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't really know what I'd do at that point. I want to say I would get the fuck out of the forest, but I'm trying already. Like it's not working.
I will say
I would take a good old anger nap.
Oh.
Just a good old angry nap, and that would solve everything.
Nico's been making the greatest of situations. So I also want to say that, like, I get it. It was magic. But real talk, that's where I feel like we'd escape. Dan be like, dude, you obviously can't read the map. Look, I did some research on the front end. The village is to the south of the woods. We're just going south. Like, that's what we're about to do.
You know, I feel like if going south led us in a loop, I would follow the river. Because the fucking river is not just going to be like magic its way around. Like, it's going in one direction. Well, like two, I guess, you know, you go one of two ways, but like that's going to lead us somewhere.
Yo, what if we just like built a raft and rode the river?
Oh, that's an idea.
Gotta think about it like that. But I now have another question for you, Nico, since you can't contribute too much to the woodsman side of things. How well do you think you keep your sanity throughout that trek?
Not very.
Oh my God.
Not very at all.
All right.
Yeah, we would have lots of arguments.
I would probably be the source of the arguments. I'm gonna be real with you. Like, maybe not even intentionally, but I would just keep fucking talking or joking, and eventually one would be like, "Oh my God, Nico, shut up!"
And I have the hardest question before we move on. I have the hardest question here.
Okay.
Who among us is going to be the one that kicks the map into the river? And would they have done it on purpose?
Well, it's not me.
None of us?
I'm allowing for an accidental clause here.
Okay, on accident, it would probably be me.
Be you?
Yeah, I don't think any of us would do it on purpose. Even if we were like real fucking mad, I don't think any of us would do it.
Yeah.
See, the worst I could see is like me getting angry and like punching the map, but I just feel like no matter what I would do, see, and the audience doesn't know this, but Dan excels at keeping people in check. I just kind of feel like and they'd be like, Justin, the fuck you about to do with the map? Kick it into the river? No. All right then. Give me back the map. I don't even know how he took it from her. Wasn't it in her back pocket?
Just had some sleight of hand fuckery.
She did say she gave it to him.
That was Josh. She gave it to, and Josh kept saying, "I gave it back to you."
Yeah, you're right. I don't know.
Because and he made it seem like he got irrationally mad and just kicked the map.
Yeah.
But like the map wouldn't have been there for him to get irrationally mad with.
Magic.
Questions. But anyways, it's time to bring this one to the good old consensus / critical review. So we've talked through a bunch about this movie. So y'all ready for the Rotten Tomato score?
Yeah.
Hit me.
So you guys won't believe this. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie is sitting at a fucking 86.
I don't believe it. You're lying to me.
From the critics, and a 56% audience score. Dan, I turn to you in my hour of need. Where does this movie rate for you?
I think it was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was okay. I am inclined to agree fairly close to the audience. I would put it at maybe like a 60.
Okay. Anything you particularly like about the movie?
I do kind of like the portrayal, or maybe it wasn't really portrayal because I guess they actually felt this way. But I don't know. I liked how the sort of decline, the anger in everyone as they were making dumb decisions, or you know, it felt real to me. And then side note, I also like how once Josh disappears, they stop arguing with each other.
Yeah.
Mike and Heather kind of like never really say it, but they're like, all right, we got to like work together and figure this shit out, you know?
True.
So I like the sort of realistic portrayal, not only in the found footage realistic aspect, but also just how the actors acted.
Nico, where's this one rank for you?
I feel similarly. I think I rate this a little bit harsher just given my sort of distance from the material, like I've said before. I am gonna give this also a 60, actually. Yeah.
So I'm going to give this one a 60.
Wow. It's higher than I thought.
My rationale is when I watched this movie, speaking frankly, audience, I was bored to tears. And I thought there was way too much happening that didn't matter so much, or there was just like, honestly, cut out the last 10 minutes and this could be advisory to people about, you know, safety when camping.
True.
And that's honestly how I feel. And it just shows like how I almost feel like the movie would have been better for having some kind of twist at the end where there was no Blair Witch. Somebody was just like fucking with them. just to show like how paranoia can cause you to do crazy things. And I feel like there's a lot of themes and concepts in this movie that if done again, they could probably do it better. But at the same time, this was kind of almost borderline revolutionary. Not quite revolutionary, but it literally changed the game.
Yeah.
And for that, I can't normally, like, I would give this movie like a 45 from how bored I was. But this was kind of a game changer in the industry, so I can't rank it too low. So for that alone, I got to give it a 60. Now, does this get a recommend from the podcast? Do we recommend people watch this?
I'm going to say no. And it's a hard one for me because on one hand, I'm like, oh, it is, like you said, such a game changer, and it's sort of one of the staples in horror. But I think I've said this before, like if you're like, Dan, what's a horror movie I should watch? We've watched 40 other movies that I would recommend over it.
I see. Nico, are you in the same boat?
I am, with one exception. I think if you are trying to get a really well-rounded sort of appreciation of horror, I think that this is a good thing to, have seen. Like, if you are in a situation where maybe, for example, you're doing a horror podcast or something, or if you just want to, go in depth to the fields of horror, I think that it's not a bad one to look at. But for a general viewer, I would say no, because even though I think I tried to highlight a lot of the positives in the movie, I was still, bored a lot of the time while watching. And just as an entertainment factor, it wasn't that entertaining.
I'm going to say this as well. I wouldn't recommend it, but I have Nico's caveat that if you're for educational purposes, I think this is worth watching. But aside from that, if you want a movie to watch on a dark and stormy night, this ain't the one. I think there's better out there. So, doesn't get the recommend from the pod, doesn't get the golden seal. Jeez, harsh on The Witch. But maybe we just haven't found what we needed from the movie. So, any last thoughts before we wrap this one up?
I've got one question for you, Justin. Both of you, actually.
Shoot.
So there is a scene in the film when the tent is shaking at night that the camera was supposed to pan over to the side, and you were supposed to get a glimpse of the Blair Witch.
Oh, that would have changed it a little bit for me.
The cameraman, whoever was manning the camera at the time, forgot to do that, and it was never reshot. Would that have changed your feelings on the film at all?
I think yes.
I think a little bit it would have, but overall my feelings would remain the same. But it would make it like a little bit better if I could see something. Because even at the end, we don't see anything.
Right. Okay.
I think it would have been a little bit more positive, maybe like up to a 65 or so, depending on like how scary the witch was, and two, like the amount that we saw.
Right.
So that's been it from us here at Don't Open That Door. If you've got some thoughts to send our way, positive or negative, drop us a line. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're on Facebook. Don't Open That Door. That's been it from Nico, Dan, and Jus. Remember your camping safety tips if you ever head out into the woods. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.